Welcome to the Insurance Technology Podcast. I'm your host, Reid Holsworth. Joining me today is world famous Mr. Bradley Flowers, co-host of the Insurance Guys podcast and president of Portal Insurance. What's up, my man? How you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm really happy to finally get to do this with you. Big fan of you and all you do. So anytime I can sit down with somebody I respect, I'm always happy to do that.
I appreciate that, man. Well, I appreciate you and everything you do for this industry. You're a real industry dude, man. And so I'm looking forward to this one. We're gonna let the audience really get to know you in a lot of ways. So
Awesome.
Before we get into all that fun stuff we call insurance around here, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where'd you grow up? What were you into? What'd you want to be when you grew up? Start there.
Yeah. So I grew up in a little town called Atmore, Alabama. We were known for two things. We were the only place in the world where there was a legit casino, like what you would see in Vegas, less than a mile from a maximum security prison that held death row inmates. That's the two things Atmore, Alabama is known for. So anytime I dated someone that did not live there, the dad would always ask, you weren't in prison, were you? That's not why you lived in Atmore, right? So
Do you still
you're not a degenerate gambler, right? So yeah, I grew up there and went to high school there. I had 22 people in my graduating class.
Wow.
And most of the 22 of us were in the same class. I think about half of the 22 people, we went K4 to 12th grade.
Wow.
All together, yeah. Don't talk to any of them anymore.
I was going to actually ask you that. Like, yeah, are you still friends with your high school pals or your school pals?
There's one guy that I talked to. He actually worked at Portal for a little while. But all our relationship now is we send memes back and forth to each other. So that's on Instagram. That's what we do. So
what was family life like?
It was good, man. You know, my dad was a small business owner. He was a contractor. My mom did his books, like classic kind of mom and pop, deal. And both of my grandfather. So my mom's dad owned a barbershop that my brother actually owns and runs today.
Oh, nice.
And my dad's dad was like a quintessential, like natural born salesman, hustler. Could sell ice to an Eskimo, kind of, that whole vernacular. So I was sort of like raised around, like, for lack of a better term, entrepreneur. Yeah, I think if entrepreneur is one of those words, if you call yourself that, you're probably not one, but
dude, it's so funny. Like it's such a true thing. Like I hate saying that now, like, because it's like you say that to somebody and they're like, yeah, that means like you're like a loser.
They automatically picture like the rented Lambo or private jet, movie set on Instagram. But sometimes sometimes it gets to a point, like that's the best way to describe it. But yeah, it's like so like calling yourself a thought leader. It's like that you ain't one, But I grew up around, these like small town, small business owner, entrepreneur / salesman guys. Like, I remember the first time I ever talked on a landline, my grandfather ran a mobile home dealership, which is very Alabama of him. And he taught me how to answer the phone and basically like take care of customers to some degree,
That's cool.
And so I was just sort of around it. And it was interesting, like my mom and my parents aren't going to listen to this more than likely. So, but like my mom, like, always sort of hated the fact that my dad owned his own business because there's stresses and struggles that come with that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so I was it would like my parents, I often heard like, get a job. Don't own your own business. It sucks, which it does for a lot of people, And I was listening to a podcast yesterday, actually. It was Dave Ramsey, his Entree Leadership podcast, which is great. And this business owner called in. She's like, my lowest paid employee made more money than I did last year, and sometimes in those small businesses you deal with that. So I was kind of like, that was like sort of beating in my head. But then all I saw were these guys and gals running their own businesses and selling stuff. And so it was like, that's all I really wanted to do. You know what I mean? So I think it was just kind of like this is going to sound cliche, but kind of like built into my DNA a little bit, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
I also don't like being told what to do. And if you don't like being told what to do, working for somebody else usually is not going to work out.
So what was your favorite hobby sport? You play sports when you were a kid?
I'm going to throw you a curveball. So from the age of 11 to 15, I was a competitive bull rider.
What? Dude, that's badass. Really?
You would never know the guy that wears skinny jeans and Air Force Ones.
That is so badass.
Yeah.
Like for real.
I literally did that. I've got photos I can show you. Traveled all over the Southeast. But the guy that I traveled with actually made it to the BBR.
Whoa.
He was a little bit better than me, but he just kept doing it. And you know, all of a sudden you start like seeing people get hurt and, you know, paralyzed or killed. Yeah. Like I had a couple buddies that I wasn't super close to, but guys I knew that like got killed. And this is like high school rodeo, you know? Yeah. And I remember my buddy that I traveled with, his dad was a professional bull rider and he was sort of like our mentor. And my grandfather did that as well. So like my dad actually encouraged me to do it. How to this day, like my mother freaks out anytime I'm on an airplane. How to this day that she let me do that, I will never know. And I remember I went to my friend's house and his dad was showing me a picture of all these like professional bull riders. And he's like, yeah, he's dead. He's paralyzed. He's missing some fingers. And I was like, man, I don't know if this is what I need to be doing. And I ended up getting hurt. I was at a bull riding thing. And there was a girl there that I was like chatting up, you know, and I fell off of a bull. And when you fall off of a bull, the number one rule is you don't get hung up in your rope. If you get hung up in your rope, the number one rule is don't lose your feet. Stand up and run with the bull.
Okay. So you don't get dragged and then trampled.
Yeah. If you lose your feet, you do whatever you can to not go under the bull. That's how you get killed. Most people get killed bull riding. Not everybody's scared of the horns. It's the feet. That's how you getting stepped on. That's how you get killed.
I could see it.
And so that happened. I went under the bull. He ripped my pants off. There's like blood running down my legs, and I happened to be wearing whitey tighties. And it was right in front of where that chick was sitting. The bad part is I was actually leading the competition. I actually completed the ride before, and I got off weird, and that's what caused it to happen. And so I think I rode like one more time after that, and I was like, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. So I went to skateboarding. I started skateboarding. So I was like the skater kid, like early high school.
Like pools and ramps or like street skate stuff?
A little bit of both. And then I stopped that around 16 and then I took up golf. So I got safer and safer with my hobbies. I remember my neighbor, actually the guy with the cigar, came over to my dad's house one time and I had a skate ramp in the backyard and he's like, man, I'm beginning to think you like have some really good life insurance on your kids because like you just keep putting them in sports that they're going to bust their butt in, like bull riding, skateboarding. But then I eventually made my way to golf. Loved golf, played golf all throughout high school. I was telling David Carruthers the other day, Josh Gurley, from 2007 to 2006 to 2012, I played golf every single day. I did not go one day, rain, snow, like hurricane, every single day. Like I was like obsessed with it. And I ended up playing in college a little bit, played some after college, and now I never play. I got it out of my system, so to speak. So
yeah. Going back to the skateboarding thing. So like a lot of people don't know this, but my brother was actually a professional skateboarder. And he was sponsored by like, this is like way in like the 90s, like whatnot, but like Vision and Independent and ALFA and all those guys. And like, as a kid, I skated too, but I was just like a little grom, you know, they just all like pick on me and like, you know, make me do dumb stuff, but it was fun. But anyways, I'd go to like Tony Alva's shop and we go there and they just like, get whatever you want. And like, as a kid, you get clothes and decks and like whatever. It was so awesome, man. But my neighbor up the street, his name was Jesse Roach. He was a professional skater too. And like these guys are like, they all skated together, like Christian Zoy and Tony Hawk and all these guys. But like
Yeah.
they're not like, there was like one professional skater, like for real, that everybody knows, right? Which is Tony Hawk.
Yeah.
But anyways, this kid up the street from me, Jesse, he had a big half pipe with like real vert, dude. It was badass. And he actually did a commercial with Michael Jordan when we were kids. And Michael Jordan it was like a Super Bowl commercial. Michael Jordan's like dribbling the ball. And Jesse, this is like the Nike pumps. I don't know if you remember those.
Yep.
Like he like pumps up his shoes, like the pumps. And then he jumps on the skateboard and he rides by and like Michael Jordan's dribbling. He steals the ball from Jordan and he hits the quarter pipe and then he dunks the ball over Jordan. And like, dude, he was like the neighborhood kid. He like got, whatever that was, like rich off of that. Cause like every time that commercial played, he got a royalty from it. It was pretty wild.
So Jamie Thomas is from Alabama. Jamie Thomas was huge in the early 2000s. He was remember the company Zero with the skull? Mm-hmm. That was his. He was like a big part of that. So Pensacola, which isn't far from me, has a pretty big skate culture there. And Tony Hawk had been there a few times and done when he was doing that. There was the Huck Jam tour and then the Secret Skate Park tour, which was the cooler one where they would just show up at a random skate park in like BFE and Tony Hawk was there. And I remember Tony was there and, the crowd was yelling 900, 900, 900, which was right after he had landed the 900. This was like 03 maybe. He did the 999 and the ramp, this was like the biggest ramp I'd ever seen in my life. It was huge. Yeah. And he said on the recording on the show, once it was produced, said the ramp wasn't big enough to do a 900. So he did a 720. And people thought it was a 900 because it's hard to count them. Totally. And people just went nuts thinking he did his second 900 because he had only done the one at that time. And so he said on the show from now on, he's calling the 720 the Pensacola 900.
Oh, that's awesome.
But I'll tell you, man, of the three things I've done, like the skating is probably like the most like deep in my like soul or in my heart, because like if I'm driving down the road and I see somebody playing golf, I'm like, yeah, that's cool, whatever. If I see somebody like, not that you would see somebody riding a bull down the road, but if I see like, I'm like, I know, but when you see somebody like on a skate, I'm always like turning my head, like trying to like, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing like driving through like downtown any city and you hear that click clack of a skateboard. It's like soothing, you know what I mean? That was the thing that I probably enjoyed the most because I turned golf into a job. And then bull riding was just so freaking dangerous. Like you were just so like anxious. You couldn't really even enjoy, you know what I mean? Like, so, but yeah, I've always sort of like gone against the, like whatever, like, and of course I like played football, baseball, growing up, that sort of thing. But like, I've always been the type to like kind of go against the grain of what everybody else is doing a little bit. You know what I mean? I like to do my own thing. I don't know. And even now, like in the insurance industry, like, if you walk into our office, you wouldn't think it was an insurance agency based on like the way it looks, the way the people are dressed, it's just always been sort of my vibe to like be a yin to the yang. You know what I mean?
Totally. What was something difficult you had to deal with as a kid? If I'm asking, get a little deeper there.
Might be getting a little personal. So when I was I've never told this story. When I was in the 5th grade, I almost died, not from a bull, actually. I had a allergic reaction to an allergy shot, literally like throat closed up, like exactly how you would imagine in the movies. I still remember it today. They didn't have an EpiPen. The doctor just had the like wherewithal to like put Benadryl in my vein. They couldn't get the needle in the vein. It was like super dramatic. My mom handled it pretty well. It was just me and my mom there, and I stayed in intensive care. Staying in intensive care as a 5th grader is pretty scary, But I remember like when I was in intensive care in the middle of the night, they wouldn't let me sleep on my stomach, which, they don't like you to do that when you're in hospital. And I rolled over and the heart monitor came off and it coded, and like the doctors came running in. I was like, no, I pulled it off, but that happened. And, I think that was pretty tough to get over. I think that created a lot of anxiety early on, and then, my grandfather passed away around that time. So I was like, kind of like exposed to death earlier that like I haven't like I've got an 11-year-old. I won't let her go to a funeral. I'm like, if I can prevent, you know what I mean? So I don't know, like that probably there's probably like two of the toughest things I dealt with growing up. But I mean, really other than that, dude, I had, awesome childhood, pretty strict parents, but they let me have a lot of fun. And, my parents weren't rich by any means, but, owning their own business, like there was some good years in there. We got to do some fun stuff and that sort of thing. And my kids have it way better than I did, which I think is everybody's goal to some degree, but yeah.
That's awesome.
You ask good questions.
Thank you. No, that's tough, dude. I can't imagine dealing with that at that age. I mean, it's just it's got to put a lot of pressure on you, worrying about that could happen again and how easy it was. And like you said, then your grandfather, that happened then. And that was tough, dude.
Yeah.
Real tough. Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, on a positive note, what did you want to be when you grew up, when you were a kid?
So depending on what age you want to, I mean, obviously like when I'm skating, I want to be a professional skater when I'm doing, that sort of thing. But I'll tell you an interesting story. We interview a lot of people on our podcast. Everybody says they never wanted to sell insurance, right?
You're not going to tell me that. Come on.
I was 16 years old, and I was at the point, and I played a couple of professional tournaments as an amateur, but I pretty much the writing on the wall was I was not going to be a pro golfer. And like being a professional golfer is different than every other sport, because literally you could say, hey, I'm Reid Holsworth, I'm a pro golfer. You're a pro golfer. That's all you have to do is declare it. You know what I mean? Like PGA Tour is a different thing, but I knew like there was no like way I could make a career out of it. So I was like, okay, I need to find something else to do that will give me the time to play golf. And so I went to school to be a teacher because I would get summers off, which is the wrong reason to be a teacher, by the way. But I remember playing golf. I was 16 years old, and the two guys that I knew that played the most golf were both insurance agents. Bob Green and Chris Kirk. Shout out to those guys. Bob passed away a few years ago. And I was like, these guys play golf all the time. They still, I'm going to go do that. And so that was the thing. Like I'm the one like rare exception and now I never play golf, but literally never. I turned down an opportunity to play to play a really nice course. I just don't have any interest in it. But yeah, man, like that as a, early teenager, that's what I wanted to be. When I'm younger, it's all over the place, man. You're delusional when you're like 10 years old and you decide what you want to be when you grow up. I think to some degree you're delusional when you're 18. I think it's kind of ridiculous that we expect 18-year-olds to pick a major and that's the thing they're going to do the rest of their life.
I agree, man. I agree. But what do you do? It's tough. Like, they got to do something, right?
Man, I've thought about it with my daughter because she's going to be going to college in 7 years. And I think I'm going to encourage her, like, unless you want to do like doctor, lawyer, engineer, something like super specific, like go get a degree that's practical in any industry, accounting, marketing, that sort of thing. Yeah. So my biggest regret, honestly, is going to college.
Really? Wow.
So I didn't finish. That's how I quit. I walked out of the classroom because I was going to school to be a teacher. I had made $60,000 in 6 months selling insurance, commission only. And the starting pay for a teacher in Alabama at the time was $30,000.
Yeah.
And I looked to my left and I looked to my right and I'm like, I'm already making like 4 times what these people are going to make when they graduate. Why am I here? I walked out of the classroom, never walked back in. So I didn't finish. So my biggest regret is I wish I've either would have not went and started insurance sooner, or I wish I would have finished one of those two. And I tend to lead towards just not going at all. Yeah.
My son's 17 and he's really smart, dude. Like, and I'm not just saying that because he's my son. He actually is a very, very smart kid. And he wants to take a year off. He wants to do the whole leap year thing, and just figure it out. He wants to go out, travel a bit and just have a good time, do some road trips and stuff with his buddies. And like, I'm like, hell yeah, dude, have at it. Figure it out. I like what you said though. Like, pick something that's like universal across all industries. If you don't really know what you want to do,
well, and I like the leap year idea as long as it's done with a purpose and you're not just like laying around the house playing video games. You know,
totally.
Like, because like my thing is like in your early 20s, that's when you can take risks. You know, like that's when like you could screw around for 3 years, come back, and if you really apply yourself, be ahead of most people that are older than you. You know, I've got 3 kids and a mortgage and, you know, all kind of stuff. Like I can't take those kind of, you know, I can't go travel the world just willy nilly for, you know, or that's when like, hey, maybe if you have like a crazy business idea that's like maybe you try that for that year, you know, whatever money your parents were going to put into college, let them, hey, let's fund this business and see what happens. There's a lot of really, matter of fact, I think there's some insurance technologies that were something similar happened like that, you know? So.
Yeah. For me, man, I'm kind of envious. Like when I was a kid, dude, I was just so after it, like just so entrepreneurial. Like I got to crush it. I got to do it. I got to figure this out. Like, you know, just work. I got married young and kids young, like, dude. And then it's like, you know, now you got to work even harder. You got to make sure those bills are paid. You got to, you know, build the future for them. And just like, so like, it's kind of cool to have kids. And now they're starting to get older. I have 3 kids as well. My oldest is 17. And my daughter is a freshman in high school. And my other son's 13. And so
you're at the light at the end of the tunnel, brother.
Oh, 100%. So it's cool to like see that. And then for them just to kind of have those opportunities to be able to kind of just chill and take it easy and figure it out, you know?
I think everything's a trade-off too. You know, like we've got some friends that had kids when they were 17, 18. And now that's
real young.
They're our age and they're empty nesters. And they're still young and they're like, this is awesome. And so, but then the flip side is if you didn't do that, like me and my wife, like I had my daughter when I was like 25, but we didn't have our second son until 2-3 years ago. So like we kind of went, you know, so we had some fun in our 20s, but now we're going to be 60 years old with, you know what I mean? So it's like everything's a trade-off and you can't get it just right. So it's like, you know, you just do what you can. How the chips fall.
Totally. All right, let's go. Let's get into your high school life real quick, and then we'll start getting in the meat of some insurance stuff.
All right.
What was your first car?
My first car was a 1994 Toyota Tacoma.
Oh, that's a sweet first car.
Yeah, it had 43,000 miles on it when I bought it.
You still have it?
I don't. I wish I did. The girl I sold it to totaled it. A week later, and I'm about to tell you why she totaled it. I jacked it up, and it had mud tires on it, even though it never went in the mud. The big like CB whip antenna. Oh, nice! It was like super redneck, dude. CB whip antenna. I had the those old Toyota Tacomas had above on the backside of it, above the back window, there was a little light that lit up when you hit the brakes. I got a metal plate made that went over it, and it had cut out "yo," which was kind of like a double entendre because Toyota, but then also "yo," you need to stop, you know. And I had a brush guard on the front of it. There was a single cab. The reason that you couldn't let the seats all the way back was because I had subwoofers behind the seats. So I drove. I drove with the steering wheel. I built the subwoofer box myself. I used to build subwoofer box for people and sell them. That was like one of my first like entrepreneurial things I did. But the reason I had 43,000 miles on it is the odometer stopped working like 5 years before. So when I sold it, it had 43,000 miles on it. Wow. But yeah, that was. And then I had a toolbox on the back that I kept locked because it would fit perfectly a cooler of beer in the back of it. So that was my first ride, and it was a lot more crappy than it sounds like. I dressed it up and made it look good, but
those trucks are cool, man. Regardless, those things can be all rusted out and just crap, and they're still cool.
They run forever, man. My buddy had one that had like 500,000 miles on it.
Oh yeah,
you know that it would just go. And I sold that truck and bought everybody had a white Z71 at my school, man. That was like the truck. and I sold it and bought this crappy white Z71 that smelled like cigarette smokes. It was cigarette smoked. It was just like a terrible truck. Should have kept the Toyota. So
yeah. A question for you. In your opinion, what is the best subwoofer?
So I was always a big Kenwood guy.
Okay.
Kenwoods with I don't remember the model or anything like that. Kenwoods with a Rockford Fosgate amp in the middle of them.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's better subwoofers out there. But I always rock the Kenwoods. I think I had like 3 or 4 sets of Kenwoods.
That's awesome. Yeah. We did like kickers. I think the best are kickers, Fosgates, but I think the best actually are JLs.
Really?
JLs are really expensive, but really good. Anyways,
yeah, I was back in the day. Budget, so I think those Kenwoods I paid like $100 for.
Oh yeah, totally.
And then the amp, I would burn the amps out every so often and have to get another one. All that jazz.
That's awesome, man. So all right, what'd you do after high school?
So I went to college. I played golf. It was junior college. I had the same coach as Bubba Watson, actually. Oh, wow. Bubba Watson and I went to the same junior college. That was around the time he won the Masters. So that was a big deal then. But I went to junior college specifically to play golf. I majored in eligibility, which meant I took whatever classes got me eligible. And I quit the golf team about a year in. I was barely good enough to be on it, but I just didn't really like the team aspect of it because golf is such an individual sport. And so I just I went to college and I played golf, and the course that I grew up on is known as like the gambling course. Like that's where you go if you want to gamble. And
why?
We mainly because they let a lot of shit slide.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
One example of that would be most golf courses will only let you have 4 to a group. I've played in a 20-some before out there.
Wow.
Like they'll let you put as many people in a group as long as you keep up pace of play. They don't care. So you could get like 8 people in a group and just get these like crazy bets going where everybody's playing everybody. And so what I would do, man, is I would go to class. My classes lasted till like mid-afternoon. I would go to the golf course. I would get in a gambling match that afternoon. And then there would always be a poker game that broke out. I'm decent at poker. And so as a college, I paid my way through college. I didn't pay for my classes, but I paid for like my expenses gambling on the golf course and at the card table at that golf course. So I would make, $100 to $300 a day sometimes playing golf.
Oh, wow.
And and sometimes lose too, but like that was literally, I did that for like 3 years. I remember I went to a class reunion, or not a reunion, but a bunch of us got together, and a buddy of mine was like, "So you just play golf every day after school?" He's like, "Do you have a life?" And I'm like, "I make more money than you do." Like, I didn't actually say that, but like, but I remember like, dude, like 20, 21 years old, I had like, like almost 5 figures stacked up in cash, which is a lot to a 20-year-old.
Oh, yeah.
I thought I was rich, but I did that for a few years and then got into insurance from there.
That's awesome. So what was your, you already said it, your first real job was insurance. Talk about that, right?
So technically my first real job, I worked at a golf course.
Okay.
I was in charge of like the carts and stuff, and I would go out and like make enough tips to pay for my lunch that day and then go do that. But then, after that, so I went to work locally for like a cell phone store, like not managing, but like working at a cell phone store. A buddy of mine was selling insurance at the time, and he was like, "Hey," this was in college, and I did the cell phone thing for like 8 months, and he was like, "Hey man, if you can sell this, you can sell insurance. Like, come work with me," So I went to work for him at Liberty National Life, which I don't recommend doing. And it was like the guy off Groundhog's Day, like it was like that. You know what I mean? I'm selling life insurance, that sort of thing, like door to door. Like, but I really kind of like cut my teeth doing that. It was commission only. They had like an advanced commission structure, so you could make like a lot of money really fast. Mm-hmm. And I really liked the fact not only was insurance something I'd planned on doing or wanted to do, but I liked the fact that I felt like a business professional. It was like more like white collar. It wasn't like out in the sun. When I worked with my dad as like a teenager, it was horrible. Like it was not typical dad working for the sun. There was no nepotism going on here. I was like at the bottom of I was the grunt,
Oh yeah. You were the worm.
Yeah, exactly. And so anyway, so I started doing that. Did really well. I did that for a year. Dropped out of college, and then sort of recognized that like, hey, P&C is actually where it's at, because, not everyone that I come into contact today is going to buy life insurance, but all of them have P&C insurance as long as they're not homeless. Totally. Like literally. And that's what I tell like new hires here. Like I take them, we have a rooftop patio up here. I take them to the top of the building and I'll say, every building you can see is insured. Every car you can see is insured. Every ship you can see is insured. Every truck you can see is insured. And so I kind of recognized that P&C was where it's at. So I quit Liberty National, went to work for a State Farm agent who was kind of like the leading like guy here in the area for P&C at the time. And because I really wanted to learn P&C, and my salary there was $15,000 a year. And I had a kid on the way.
Yeah.
And it was like, it was an internship. I mean, it was like, I was like, I tell people like, I love when I get like a young kid. Like if I was to like talk to your oldest son, like young kids today tend to think that success is linear. Like you're going to go from here and then you're going to go from here and when in reality, it's like this.
Yeah.
You probably know that better than anybody, Yeah. And sometimes like you got to take a step back to move forward. And it's the people who always constantly want to move forward that end up getting stuck in a dead end job where they're making $70K and I've got to stay for the health insurance because they didn't take risks when they were younger. You know what I mean? So I did that for a little while and ended up liking it, I think.
Did you sell life insurance as well, or just P&C at State Farm?
They hired me because I had a life insurance background. So I did P&C and life, but really, I really wanted to learn P&C.
Yeah.
That was that because I mean, everybody buys it. Like I was thankfully as a dumb, 20-something-year-old recognized at least that like everybody's buying home and car insurance,
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So then what happened? So State Farm, then what?
So I did that for a year. There's a regional carrier here in Alabama called ALFA Insurance, ALFA. They're essentially Alabama's version of Farm Bureau. They had a really nice comp structure, they sort of set you up kind of like you own your own agency, but you don't. So that company gave a lot of benefits that business owners would have. And so I liked the idea of that. I was ready to make some money. So at a year after State Farm, I quit and went to work at ALFA. And it was kind of serendipitous, actually, how it happened. I don't know that I've told this story ever. So I was trying to get hired on at ALFA and I didn't know anybody there. And I kept filling out the apply for a job form on the website. Well, I didn't know that ALFA is like horrible with technology. And their form was broken. So they didn't get any of my applications and I couldn't, whatever. So I was still at State Farm. So my dad had a water claim. He had a water heater that leaked and it ruined a wood floor. And he called me he's like, hey, the adjuster's coming over. Would you mind coming over here? And just like, you're in the insurance business. Like, sure. So the adjuster comes by and, I was like, should I say something to him? And he had ALFA. Like, should I say something to him? Like, nah, I'm not going to say anything. So the guy comes and he leaves. And then 5 minutes later, he comes back and he says, I've been adjusting for 34 years and I have never forgotten to take photos of a claim. And I just did that at your house. I need to take photos. And so I was like, hey, man, while I got you here.
Oh, wow.
And he's like, I've been trying to get hired on. I've been trying to get in touch. And I wasn't as resourceful back then, Reid, as I am now. Like now I'd be like, let's go to LinkedIn. Let's figure out, I wasn't. Yeah. And I really didn't grow up with technology. And so I didn't really know social media then either. And he was like, yeah, let me find out who you need to talk to. And the next day he gave me my future boss's name. I called him and I started with the company like a month later. And so had he not And by the way, the reason I met my wife was because her office was next door to my ALFA office. So had that dude not forgotten to take photos of that claim for the first time in 34 years, I might not be married to the person I'm married to now. Like, which is wild to think about.
It's
like,
so crazy. Like, it's almost like, was it supposed to happen? Like, would he have taken those photos if you would have asked him initially?
Right.
Or was it like, like just like the universe, not to get super deep on this, just like, oh, wait, nope, you're not done here. You got to go back. And you were like, all right, I'm going to do it now,
Yeah.
and look at what it did.
Well, and to even add something to that. So there was 2 offices that I could go to when I was being hired there. They wanted to give me the option of 2 offices. Well, I wanted to go, my boss wanted me to go to Saraland, which was the one that I ended up going to. But I wanted to go to this other one that was in a town called Bay Minette because it was closer to my house. And he's like, do me a favor. Go to the Bay Minette office and talk to, so the ALFA, you share an office with another principal. He's like, go talk to that guy. And I talked to him for 5 minutes and I was like, this guy is a psychopath. I do not want to work with this person. He ended up getting fired later because he brought a gun to the office. And so I called him in the parking lot, my boss, and I was like, hey man, I want to go to Saraland. He's like, so you talked to this guy for 5 minutes? I was like, that's exactly what happened. So even then it was like, not to get religious, but it's like the Lord was pushing me to like, and then I would have never met my wife then. So there was so many like little things that happened. Not to be like super evangelical about my career because I think I'm, a speck on a horse's butt in the grand scheme of things. But like there was a lot of little things like that happened that kind of led me to where I am now. And it's crazy to think about that. And I think we all have that to some degree, you know, like you probably have like early like tech canary stuff that like if this one thing wouldn't have happened,
Totally.
So
100%. Oh, that's awesome. So then how long did you do that? Then what happened?
I was there for 6.5 years. At the time, it was the best thing for me because it was like practice for being a business owner, lot of stuff I could do that I couldn't do if I just worked for somebody. Really learned marketing there, really learned social media there. I had a boss, unfortunately our relationship did not end great when I quit, but he really like understood that I needed to be left alone. And if he needed me to do something, telling me to do it was the worst. Let me come to my own conclusion because I was full of piss and vinegar, man, Yeah,
totally.
And gave me the freedom to like flex my marketing muscles and all that. I probably did it about 3 years too long. But 2017, I started there in 2013, 11 days after my daughter was born. In 2017, Scott and I started the podcast. Naturally, our podcast guests were independent agents because independent agents traditionally are more likely to share. Independent agents tend to have somewhat of an abundance mindset, whereas captive agents, it's like you're always fighting with the company to some degree. So you got to keep your, And so we interviewed a lot of independent agents through the podcast, got in some rooms that I probably didn't deserve to be in, through that, and really learned the ropes through the podcast. And I remember, and I was dealing with a lot of issues at ALFA because just the culture was terrible. Like those nightmares you have that you're back in high school. I have those same nightmares, but I'm back at ALFA. Literally, I'm not joking at all. Like my wife asked me the other night, we had to fly to Arkansas. We got up like 4 a.m. and she's like, man, you really slept bad last night, didn't you? I was like, I had those dreams again. She's like, the ALFA dreams? I'm like, yep. There was just a lot of it was just, I could sit here all day and tell you stories and you'd be like, that, no way that happened. I'd be like, yeah, that happened. But I was like, I think I want to start an independent agency. And through the podcast, I had a lot of relationships that helped accelerate that. I was probably the most prepared person in the history of the United States of America to start an independent agency. So me and my wife, we don't do it. We didn't do it last year, but typically every December we rent a cabin somewhere in the woods and we do business planning for 2 days. She's in her room, I'm in my room. It's just like a, thing or whatever. It's also a nice write-off. And I was like doing some planning, and like we met up for dinner that night, and she's like, "Do you think you just want to go ahead and do it?" And this was like December the 29th. And I was like, "Yeah, I do." And she's like, "Well, why don't you go back on Monday and quit?" And I was like, "Well, I get paid on January the 7th, so why don't I quit on the 8th?" So I got paid. I quit the next day.
Wow.
And then Portal was born March the 1st of 2019. And rock and rolling, man. That's how Portal started. And it's a completely different business today than what we started. I think it's harder today than when I started. And we've grown it. We've got, I think we're at 15 employees. We're, probably, I think there was a magazine came out a couple weeks ago. We were like in the top 20 in the state of Alabama in terms of book size and that sort of thing. I don't put a lot of weight into that, but it is nice to look back and see, like, we started in a little concrete block building that was next to a pizza shop and it wasn't even a good pizza shop. It was a Little Caesars. And so every day it smelled like pizza to what it is now. And so, yeah, that's what we are now.
That's awesome, man. What makes your agency different than others?
Several things. One, it's not compared to the people that you and I know, but definitely compared to the competition around here.
Right. Yeah, fair enough.
We use a lot of technology that enhances the customer experience. A lot of technology that enhances the customer experience that the customer doesn't even know about, that happens on the back end that allows us to be more efficient. An example, I spoke to a group of 400 agency owners in Alabama. And I asked them, who here is using a CRM that is not your agency management system? That many hands went up.
Yeah.
Zero. And I remember telling one of my employees was in the crowd, and I was like, we're going to kick their butt so much. Like because like it gives us such an advantage, just from managing policy. So the technology aspect, I think some of my relationships in the industry, like we are, most new carriers that have come to this area, we get them first. Like we're the first agency in Alabama appointed with Geico.
Oh yeah, nice. That's awesome.
Openly, it was another. I look at carriers and technology almost like buying stocks. You buy low, sell high. You buy it early, like the quicker you can get in. And there's been some duds in there too. So that's a huge advantage. I think our focus we focus heavily on culture and do people want to be here? Like I want people who want to be here. I don't want people that want a job. I think we're in tune with a lot of things that a lot of other agencies are not. But at the same time, we're not special, and our sort of like North Star, the thing that we are all collectively looking at is we want to redefine the way an independent agency operates. We want to set the standard for the future, the agency of the future, for lack of a better term. That's not an egotistical thing. It's not, I don't say that to be like grandiose or anything, but like that's our, like, I have a sign in here that says, we are not here to do what has already been done.
Yeah.
That's our thing, man.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
And by the way, we screw up a lot. We got a lot of issues. Everybody has a lot of issues. Everybody has a lot of issues. The business that doesn't have any issues doesn't exist. But I was recruiting someone recently, a producer from another agency, and she was complaining to me about all the issues and the agency owner wouldn't address them and this and that and the other. And I said, here's the thing. Every single issue you just ran by me, we have had too. The difference is we fix it. Like somebody comes to me with a problem, we immediately jump in and fix it. And like one of my people on my leadership team Tuesday came to me and she's like, I think we have a problem with consistency. Like people are not, they're especially some producers, like they're wanting to work really, really hard for 2 weeks out of the month and then slack off. I'm like, I would rather you be a little bit less productive and be consistent, because it's going to make your life easier because you're commissioned and your pay is going to, that whole thing. And so that was Tuesday. This morning, we had a big pep talk, company-wide, all hands on, where I riffed on consistency and that sort of thing. So like we see a problem and we jump to fix it,
Yeah. Quick question. You're talking about Alabama. I mean, we may have talked about this before, but you know Boyd McGee, Talladega Insurance.
Man, I have heard the name a bunch. I do not know him. I
He
know
used to be
Cass is
like,
big buddies with him.
yeah, oh yeah. Cass and him go way back, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boyd used to be pretty involved in the industry, but like, his unfortunately his dad passed away. He took over the agency. He's been kind of just doing his thing for a while.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if you see him. I love that dude.
Talladega is one of those places you need a helicopter to get to from where I'm at. It's like, it's way away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you look at Alabama, I'm down all the way down by the beach. I'm at the bottom. I'm basically northwest Florida.
Gotcha.
I'm almost Florida. And, Alabama is very segmented. It's kind of like, especially from like the Big Eye, like all that stuff, like there's almost like a line that goes through Birmingham. Everybody north of there might as well be in another state.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
But yeah, so I don't know him, man. I don't know him. I've heard a lot about him though. And I think that was happening with his dad around the time we started Portal. So I think
That's
he and I just,
right. Yeah. I'd say that's about right. Yeah. He used to run like the Young Agents Association or something. Like he was pretty involved. He's a good dude, man. Him and Todd actually is one of his boys. We did a big hike out in the Quinault many years ago. And Boyd like almost died of hypothermia, for real. Story for another day.
Wow.
But it's crazy. So I know that dude. It's fun. I like seeing him around. He's a good dude.
Now I'm curious to know. I've got some cousins whose last names are McGee, so we might even be related. Never know. It's Alabama, dude. You got to be. You got to be careful, man. You got to be careful. You may start dating somebody, and the next thing you know, you find out they're your cousin. That's the whole cliche Alabama thing.
So your podcast, very popular, lots of fans. You talk to a lot of people, interview a lot of folks across the whole industry. If you could fix something in our industry, what would it be? One thing.
I'm not going to give the cliche technology answer. We do a lot of E&S business. If I could wave and I know there's reasons that it's that way, but if I could wave the magic wand, I would eliminate all the big wholesalers and go direct to those carriers.
Interesting.
Because a lot of times, like if we're writing, like we do a lot of condo associations, I'm sending it to an underwriter who's sending it to an underwriter who's sending it to an underwriter.
Right. Yeah.
And you add, so you add all those people in the process. It just, it delays things. It leaves room for error. It's this person's got to get their piece of commission. This person's got to get their piece of commission. This person's got to get theirs. And ultimately that trickles down to the consumer. And also you have like some of the large wholesalers who they kind of control the tail wags the dog a little bit,
mm-hmm.
And that was perfect timing, by the way.
Scared me. I was like,
perfect. Tail wags the dog. Your dog agreed with that. Please leave that in the podcast. So a lot of these carriers, man, like even talking about the MGAs and the whole, like even talking about like Ivan's downloads. Like there's no reason why the largest wholesaler in the world does not download Ivan's. But hey, we've got all these like exclusive contracts with these carriers. Why do we have to update our technology?
Yeah.
It's like there's a restaurant down the street from me that is like the number one burger in the state of Alabama that's very popular, and the customer service is horrible. And I can't help but think the attitude is like, we've got the best burger in Alabama. Why do we have to be good at customer? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, no, totally.
And you can't be entitled to your success. And so I think that if I could wave a magic wand, I would fix that. And I know that there are reasons it is the way that it is. So if you're a wholesaler listening to this, please don't like cancel my contract or anything. But I would severely, like, I respect, like there's a guy here named Taylor Norton who's got a local wholesaler that downloads to Ivan's and pushes the envelope. Like I respect those guys so much because they're trying to do things differently. So I think that would be it, man. I think that would have the biggest impact on the industry and ultimately help the consumer the most as well.
By the way, for the listeners and yourself as well, a lot of those big wholesalers are going live on Ivan's. We've actually sold a lot of them, but they're all going through implementation. So it's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming. But yeah, no, that's interesting, man. That's interesting. So what technology do you see having the greatest impact on the industry in the next couple of years?
Anything that eliminates multiple entry.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you heard my talk at Cass's thing 2 weeks ago, but like that's my North Star. If we're going to use any technology, is does this eliminate entry or create entry?
Yeah.
That's, so I look at, like, I don't know if you want me to give actual shout outs, but like
Sure.
I look at like Gaia. That's like, that's what they do, is eliminate entry. Anything from that aspect, Ivan's, anything that eliminates entry is what I'm the most excited about. Because the thing is, like, if you take an agent, like when we were, $1 million in premium, it didn't really matter that we had to enter information in a separate field, right?
Totally.
Yeah. And then as you grow, those problems are magnified. Like we're going to be probably right around or above 2 million in revenue this year when the year closes, which is a lot smaller than a lot of other agencies, but we've grown really fast. We've done that in 5 years. And so now it's like, okay, if I add this one extra program, now everybody's got to enter, it just gets, it magnifies things. It's just like if you're signing up for a contract with an e-signature provider. Yeah, when you got 2 employees, $10 a seat, no big deal. But when you have 20, it starts adding up, and that's how I look at inefficiencies and that sort of thing. Now, the flip side is because the inefficiencies are magnified, it's easier to spot them, But that's anything that eliminates multiple entry, whether they want to call it AI or it does some kind of AI thing, I think is overall a net positive for the industry. And also, if you look at, like, from a competitive standpoint, man, if somebody calls me and then they call a State Farm agent, that State Farm agent may not have to enter anything in the system.
Yeah.
So
true.
from just a competition standpoint, if I, as an independent agent, have to enter the client data here, and then I have to enter it here, and I have to enter it here, and I have to enter it here, by the time I get to where I can quote it, the damn State Farm agent's got the quote back to them, know? And so just from that, I mean, the biggest way to increase your closing ratio is speed to quote. And so anything we can do to eliminate that is that's my jam, man. That's probably the one thing from a technology standpoint I focus on the most.
That makes total sense. I love how simple you put it too. It's so true.
And I've wasted a lot of money, like myself trying to build stuff and trying vendors that I thought would solve it that just didn't.
That's awesome. Any advice you'd give to young entrepreneurs coming into the space on the technology? We'll do this on the agency side and maybe on the technology side.
All right, let's do technology first. Don't alienate your competition.
What do you mean by that?
I've seen some companies come in the last few years that they want to be brash and cocky.
Get up on stage and talk a ton of shit about the incumbents.
Exactly. That's actually exactly what I said about Cass's conference.
Yeah.
And they do that to get attention, and that's great. Yes. I respect that. I think an appropriate level of shade is okay. Mm-hmm. Right?
Fair enough. Totally.
But the problem is it's hard to build an all-in-one solution from scratch.
Very hard.
And it's going to take 10 years.
It takes a long time.
And
I don't care what any of you say. It takes a long time.
It does. And for you've got to play nice with your competition. You can't pull the whole Silicon Valley thing where you come in and just are like super aggressive towards your competition, because in order for people to use your solution, it has to work with your competition.
Yep.
Right. You're decreasing your TAM substantially by doing that. I think that's the biggest mistake I see a lot of Insurtechs make. The other mistake I see Insurtechs make is, because a lot of these guys and gals are coming from outside the industry and they think they know everything, right?
Yes.
But you might. That's fine.
Yeah, they might be way smarter than we are in many ways.
You've got to have some agents in your corner. You've got to have some people who are in the business that are in your corner. One of the smartest things that I've seen is Insurtechs that build an agents advisory council that comes with like some equity or something. They're bought in, and they are like the agents have their ear, and it's like, hey, you need to try this, you need to do this. Like there's
they're
one
design partners. They're they're thought leaders around how they're molding the product and whatnot.
Yeah, well, there's like Ascend I was involved in very early, and their thing is they didn't want to be just a premium finance company, and they're not just a premium finance company. But I told them, if you don't call yourself a premium finance company, nobody's going to know what you do.
Yeah,
like the way you deliver that message, so like different things like that. And then it's very easy, I think, in Insurtech to create problems that don't exist and try to solve those problems, and they don't exist. And so I think that's where having somebody who's in the industry helps tremendously. The other side of the question is, in people who want to start insurance agencies, it's way harder than you think it's going to be. It's not easy at all. Would probably be my biggest answer. There's been some guys that are like big time entrepreneurs and these like holdco guys that I've seen like on Twitter and stuff that are starting insurance agents. I'm like, man, this isn't a insurance. Just because the money functions like a passive investment rental property, it is not a passive investment rental property.
No,
like it's a business you have to work in, and if you don't have somebody on your side that's done it before and that sort of, this is not a passive investment type of business. You know what I mean?
Grind, dude. There's a lot of work that goes into it, especially on the service side.
Yeah.
I mean, it is not easy. Not easy.
No, not at all. And the carriers are what makes it hard. If you had one carrier, it'd probably be fine.
Captive, totally, right? Yeah,
and not to say that that's not hard, but that's where it gets complicated.
It's learning all the portals. It's all the different flavors. It's all the different appetites. It's all it's
like whack-a-mole. Like this carrier does this, that creates a problem over here. So like we're getting to the point now to where even from like a billing standpoint, man, every carrier does it differently. And so you've got to remember, this one does it this way, this one does it this way, and that sort of thing. And I just, that would be my advice, is like, it's going to be a lot harder than you think. And honestly, man, like I've been telling a lot of people that have been reaching out to me, especially if they're coming from outside the industry and they're thinking about starting an agency, I've been telling them, like, go to work for an agency.
Yeah, totally.
Do that.
And learn it. Yeah.
And do it under the premise of, hey, I'm going to open my own agency one day. Like if you do that, I think that person's going to be a lot more inclined to help you. Like, and honestly, I've got a couple people here. I got one for sure that came to me and she said, I want to start my own agency, but I want to learn from you. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. As long as we do it above board, like I'm fine with that. And then she worked here like 6 months and she's like, I don't want to own my own agency. I'm like, that's exactly. So.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, thank you for that. I used to have a lot of young startup agencies come to me at my Tech Canary days. And one of the things like I found is, and I might have spoken this on this podcast before, but I found a lot of people can be very entrepreneurial, where like they want to like build out the prettiest, best system and have the best technology and all of that before they start closing deals. And I used to be like, I'm not going to sell to you.
Yeah.
Like go get a freaking Trapper Keeper and a number 2 pencil right now and go start closing some deals, man. You'll figure it out.
You know what we started with? An agency management system, form stack for e-signatures, and a phone.
There you go.
And by the way, I'd done the podcast. I knew like, Tori at Rocket Referrals, and I knew you, and I knew like, like all these folks, like I had access to all that stuff and knew about all the cool like customer experience stuff. Like I went up to like Paradiso's office and learned about, I was like, we're not doing any of that stuff. We got to get this bad boy profitable, because I can give the best customer experience in the world. If we can't sell insurance, none of that matters.
That's exactly right.
That's a mistake I think I see a lot of folks make, is they go and they, especially if you're coming from captive, because you're told what you can do. And now the world is my oyster. I can sign up for anything, and there's not a compliance department that tells me I can't use a text message platform or something. So that was our thing initially, is, man, like, what do we need to sell insurance? And then we'll slowly layer on that other stuff. The other version of it that I've seen that Scott actually did is he actually signed up with every platform in the world, but then whittled it down to what he needed. It is like, hey, we're going to try everything and then we're going to go back to like what we actually need. And I think that's smart as long as you have the discipline to get rid of stuff.
Yeah, totally. And you really have the time to really vet all those out too.
Yeah.
Because that's and the money, because that can be pretty expensive.
They can be very expensive.
That's cool, man. Let's transition to some other topics. Let's talk about leadership real quick, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
What does a leader mean to you?
I think the best definition of a leader, a true leader, is like Simon Sinek definition is like people tend to think the leader is the one that's in charge, but the leader is really the one that takes care of others in their charge. Like I've always looked at it like my people work for the customers and I work for them. Like my job is to make sure they are good and they have what they need to do the job. And my business philosophy is hire great people, pay them well, give them the tech and processes to do their job the most efficiently, rinse and repeat. Like if somebody brought me into, and I'm not saying that I'm right, that's just that's the lens I look at it through. If somebody brought me in their company, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at your people, we're going to look at your processes, we're going to look at your comp. And then once we get that right, we're just going to do that over and over and over and over and over again. That's what I do here. But like, and I could give you an example. Like Tuesday, had a really busy day. Had an employee walked in my office crying. Had a problem. Clear the schedule. Let's go to lunch. Like, let's go talk about it somewhere else. I think, dropping what you're doing because I am here to serve these people. I think, and now, by the way, I think I'm like a 4 out of 10 leader. I don't think I'm great, but at least I know that. You know what I mean? If you know you're not a good singer, you're way better off than if you think you're a good singer and you're not. But I think that, I'll go ahead and say this now because I don't know the next question. It's really easy to be a leader of a team of 3. It's really easy to be a leader of a team of 5. But as you get more and more people, you yourself have to progress and learn yourself. Okay, how do I lead a team of 15? How do I lead a team of 20? How do I lead a team of 50? And by the way, if one day we're at 50 employees, I'm going to be like, damn, it was really easy when I had 15. And I think it's really hard right now, And so I think it's constantly improving, like you've got some cool cars back there. Like you and I could take that red car. I think that's a convertible, right?
No, it's not.
It's not. All right, we take that red car and drive it down the road. I could drive it, no problem, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If we get in a NASCAR stock car, it's still driving, but it's a lot harder.
Yeah.
And that's how I look at leadership as your company grows. You have to then, progress your own skills. And I'm constantly like trying to learn and read books and listen to podcasts and YouTube videos to try to improve my leadership skills. So I don't think you can be a good leader and just sit on that and be like, this is a skill that I have. I'm a good leader. I think you constantly have to grow with it, But I look at, there's a couple entrepreneurs here locally that I'm a big fan of, that I'm friends with, that are just really good leaders of their team. And if I had to pinpoint one thing, that's what they do well. Like they really they take care of the people that are in their charge, Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes that comes with tough decisions. I told Carrie Wallace yesterday, I was like, I kind of feel like a politician now because no matter what decision I make, it's going to piss off half the people. When you're 3 people, it's really easy to make a decision that makes everybody happy.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, you obviously consider yourself a leader. At what point in your career did you realize, or not even career, at what point in your life did you realize that you're a leader?
Probably like the day we started Portal. I'm not going to say I realized I was a leader. I realized I had to be one.
Right.
That was it. But honestly, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a team of people and lead those people and that sort of thing. I don't know that I would ever call myself that.
Hold on. Do you consider yourself a leader?
I do because I have to be. Like I said earlier, I consider myself like a 4 out of 10 just because like we've stepped it up and I've now had to like improve myself as a leader. And I think that I think my team would probably not rank me 4 out of 10. I think I'm harder on myself
Oh yeah, I bet
than they are.
They rate you pretty high. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love for somebody to like really like call them out and be like, all right, tell me, you know. And I've even had conversations with some of my people here and said, hey, look, I want you to be brutally honest with me. Nothing that you say is going to get you fired. Tell me where I'm lacking.
You should do like a quantitative 360. I've done those before where they actually, somebody comes in, third party, they interview the whole team and they give you the feedback.
Yeah.
You know, it's pretty eye-opening.
Yeah.
I recommend that to everybody.
I will say this, Reid. I've had some bad bosses in the past. The a-hole boss, you know, and I'm more empathetic to them now than I was then because I've realized how hard it is to tote that line of everybody liking you versus being an a-hole. You know what I mean? Like I'm way more empathetic to like my last boss who managed like 45 people. You know, and I'm like, oh, that's why he did that thing he did. He really wasn't being a jerk. It was just he had, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but now I will say I did take away a lot from my last 2 bosses that are like, okay, here's what I don't want to do. You know what I mean?
Totally, man. All right. What is the most important trait a leader should have?
Probably decision-making skills.
Yeah.
You know, like if you look at like Jeff Bezos, you know, Jeff Bezos has said many, many times that what he gets paid to do is make high-level decisions really fast. I think it's that. I also think it's network who can help you make those decisions. Natasha, our director of sales, came in my office a couple of weeks ago. I'm blessed with a great network. And she came to me with a problem that we hadn't dealt with before. And I kind of leaned back in my chair and I didn't say anything. And she's like, and normally you can't shut me up, you know? And she's like, what are you doing? And I said, I'm going through my mental Rolodex to think who has dealt with this problem before. And I made 2 phone calls and I found somebody who had dealt with it before and they told us how to solve it. You know, so I think being humble enough to be able to say, I don't know how to solve this problem. Let me talk to somebody. You know, I know a former agency owner who failed, who was too prideful to ask people for help. And that's why he failed. You know, I tell all new agency owners, have someone that you're not scared to ask stupid questions to. You know, totally. I had a guy, unfortunately he's passed away, but literally that first year in business, I would call him and he would literally answer the phone, insurance agency hotline, because he got tired of me calling him so much. I'd be like, hey man, how do I do this thing? You know? So, yeah.
How do you define success? What does success mean to you?
Being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
Fair enough.
To dovetail that in, what for me personally, I like playing the game of business for the love of playing the game.
Yeah.
I don't want to play the game of business because I have to make money.
Oh, totally. Right. The money will come too if you play it that way.
I want to be able to play it because I like playing it. And so when I get to the point financially that I can do that, like that's when I will consider myself like truly like a success. You know, I've got a buddy who is really successful entrepreneur. If I said his name, a lot of people would know it. And that's kind of where he's at. He's financially set, so he gets to do stuff that he wants to do, whether it's like investing in a company just to help them because it looks like a fun thing to do, or like, you know, like travel to some, you know, like all that, you know, that's to me, those are like the folks that are truly successful and they have a great home life.
Yeah,
you know,
fair
because
enough.
You can, you know, like, man, if, you know, you can be all, you know, all the business success in the world. If you know, you lose your family in the process or vice versa, like it's, you gotta do both. You know, that's been, you know, like, not that we've had any issues or anything, but like, that's been something I've had to realize like now is like, you know, like I get frustrated sometimes because like, you know, a kid gets sick and it knocks me out of the game for a week or whatever. And I was watching a video of Jamie Dimon, and I think Jamie's like 60 years old now, and he was going through his morning routine, and I was like, I can't do any of that because I get up, I got to change diapers and make lunches for the day and stuff. And I was like, man, I'm going to be a badass when these kids are grown. Like, so why don't I just like accept a little bit less business growth now to have a little bit more balance with the family life, and I'm good, you know? So I think you have to, you know, it's like the Bible verse. It's like, I think it's a Bible verse. I apologize if it's not, but it does a man no good to gain the world and lose his soul. You know, you gotta cover both bases. So
Well said. Well said. Do you give back? If so, how do you give back?
You know, couple ways. I mean, obviously, like I feel like I give back a lot to I call it insurance land. You know, whether it's
100%.
podcasts, helping agents. You know, I do a once a month ask me anything call. So I've always had agents reach out to me and ask for like an hour of my time, and unfortunately, like I don't have it right now. And so what we're doing is I'm doing a once a month ask me anything call where like I have anywhere from 10 to 30 agents on there where we're just like spitting out, and it's more of a group thing. It's not the Bradley Flower Show that people are doing. And it's the link, if you want me to drop it, is portalinsurance.com/AMA. So, you know, I love helping people, like back to like me reaching out to that mentor that's dealt with that problem. Like I love like helping people with their problems. From a charity aspect, you know, my wife is very charitable. She's involved in a lot of stuff. It was funny. We both did a DISC assessment with this consultant, and she looked at hers and she looked at mine, and she said, here's the biggest difference in you two. She said, she is very likely to donate her time to a charity. You are very likely to donate your money to a charity. And not your time. And I was like, sister, you hit the nail on the head. You know, so between the two of us, we do pretty well with that. You know, we give back. You know, we tithe and we donate to, you know, people who are doing mission work in Africa, and then anything here locally. You know, anytime I see something that touches my heart, you know, our friend Raghav Tana started Little Sparks Project.
Yep.
And that was near and dear to my heart. Those Little Sparks, they help parents who have kids who are going through medical stuff. My youngest son was in the hospital for 2 weeks, like the longest 2 weeks of my life. Thankfully, he's okay. And I just remember thinking the whole time, like luckily my wife and I have the means and the type of job where we can be away for 2 weeks if we need to. But there's a lot of people there that didn't. Like the number of kids in that hospital that had no parents with them throughout the day because the parents had to work was just heartbreaking. I'm talking like young kids. Yeah. And so we raised recently about I think $9,000 for Little Sparks. I was like, hey, like I don't know how to do much, but there's like a few business skills that I have, and so I did a webinar on recruiting that was $99, and so I was like able to like do something that I liked while also raising money for charity. So little ways like that, you know. I'm not. You know, there's certain people that everything they do runs through like the altruistic filter. I'm not one of those people, but I eventually make my way there, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I didn't realize that you were donating to Raghav's Little Sparks. That's pretty cool. For the listeners that don't know, that's Raghav Tana is the founder of Tarmica, now runs all the commercial lines at Applied on the tech side. Raghav's a great dude. He's been on maybe even a couple times now, but he's having an event soon. It's like coming up in a couple of weeks. Actually.
I'm going to be there. It's in December.
Okay, yeah.
I'm going to be there. It's in Boston. You can still get tickets now. Yeah. Raghav actually, man. So like when we started Portal, we had no commercial appointments. Raghav wanted me on Tarmica. I'm like, bro, I don't have any commercial appointments. He actually got me my first like 3 or 4 commercial appointments.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
I owe a lot to that guy, man. Like
that's awesome.
He was very like I think the first commercial policy we wrote was Liberty Mutual, and Raghav got me that appointment. And he basically called these carriers and was like, I want this agent on Tarmica and he needs and I was like, all right, cool.
Wow. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, that's super cool you do that. So aside from family, I always ask aside from family, because we all have families, we all have kids, we're all busy with all that stuff. What do you do for fun?
All right. I'm going to tell you. So I'm not a gamer.
Okay.
I'm not. Okay.
But
I played GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo 64. That was the only game I played growing up. I bought an Oculus about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And there's a game on there called Golf Plus. It is a VR golf game, and it's the closest thing to real golf that I've ever seen. I play that every night for 20 minutes before I go to bed. You can play 18 holes in 20 minutes.
No kidding.
And I've maybe have missed 2 nights in the last 2 years. And I made it up to number 2 in the world on that game, actually. And I would just get on there because like it's a bunch of video game nerds that play it, but I actually know how to play golf from like a course management standpoint. And so I have like a little bit of a leg up, and I would just get on there every night for like 20 minutes and just whip some 15-year-old's butt. And so that's honestly like, man, outside of family stuff, like I love doing that. I don't take it overboard, and I'm not like leaving work to go play it, but that's my way to like kind of like get it, like just relax for 20 minutes before I go to bed. And I'm sure like the blue light therapy people are going to be like, oh, you don't need to put that on your face right before bed, that's what I like doing. Honestly, it helps me sleep better. I'm super competitive, so that's fun. Outside of that, man, like my favorite thing in the world to do is to like get a babysitter for the kids and go with my wife and grab dinner and a drink. Like I just love like eating and like fellowship from that standpoint. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. If you had unlimited time, what would you do? And money, I guess.
Yeah, unlimited time, I would do exactly what I'm doing now. I would just do more of it. Unlimited money, I would leave this podcast right now and go buy a private jet. Right now.
Can I come?
Absolutely. And not from a like Instagram flex standpoint, just from a like, it's a time machine.
Yeah.
Totally. I've figured out that a $3 million jet would be $1 million tax write-off. So as soon as I owe $1 million in taxes, I'm buying a little bitty small $3 million plan. I'm obviously half joking, but I did do the research on that. I just think like if you think about like the time we waste in the airports and the opportunities we miss because we can't be at this place and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, unlimited money, that's exactly what I would do.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. All right, last question. Important question. Actually, I have one more question after this question.
Okay.
Second to last question. What's your favorite drink?
I like a whiskey neat.
Whiskey neat.
Mm-hmm. My favorite bourbon is either, which is a cliche answer. I like Weller 107. That's a staple. There is a bottle on my shelf. If I have a decent bourbon collection, nothing like Raggev's, but I have a decent bourbon collection. And if I showed it to you and said, which bottle up there is the tastiest bottle, the only way you'd be able to guess it is because there's 3 of them. But outside of that, you'd never guess it. It's a Jack Daniel's twice barreled special release rye. You would never pick the Jack Daniels. I mean, I've got Pappy Van Winkle, I've got Heaven Hill, all the good stuff. You would never pick the Jack Daniels being the best thing. You'd be like, that's last. But yeah, I like a whiskey neat, and no ice, no water. Outside of that, I like an old fashioned, but I'd just rather have it neat. So
I was just at CIAB, it's ILF, the big conference, whatever. And my friends at Liberty Mutual, they had a cocktail hour thing, and they had a Pappy tasting station. And they had all the way up to a 23.
Wow.
It was pretty wild. And they had this one, I forgot what it was, but it wasn't like, it was same, but it was different. Dude, it was so good. I've never done that high a one. I've done like the lower years.
I enjoy the bourbon hunt.
Yeah.
I like the hunt trying to find it. So Alabama is a controlled state. And the state controls all of our liquor. And so they do a bourbon drop. They do a small drop once a month. That's like Blanton's and Buffalo Trace Eagle Rare, like stuff you can find. And then once a quarter is like the hard to get stuff. And the annual one is at the end of the year. And it's like I showed up last year at 3:00 and it started at 6 a.m. I showed up at 3:00 and I got a bottle that was so good I traded it for a Pappy straight up. Like that was still
Wow.
some really good stuff left at 3:00, and so I don't miss the annual drop. Well, this year me and my wife are going to be out of town.
Oh no.
And I was like, hey, is there any way that we could push our trip? And she was like, she gave me a look that I knew the answer was no. So I was like, okay, all right. I'm big on delegating. So I walked out to one of my employees. I was like, hey, it's on December 14th. I was like, hey, how would you like to have the day off on December 13th? She's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I will give you the day off on December 13th. I will give you $100 cash. I'll give you my credit card, and you go stand in line at this Bourbon thing. And she was like, absolutely, done. She's like, can I bring my husband and you give us $200? I was like, I get double the bottles. I'm good.
Nice.
So who knows, next year, man, I may bring a convoy of people with me, But I like the hunt. I like and I don't know if you've ever been to any bourbon drops, but like you meet some people that have a lot of, similar interests. And I've even sold some insurance in those lines, because you stand in the line for like an hour and people are like, Portal Insurance, what are you? And I'm like, hey, yeah, here's my card. And they give me a call,
Yeah,
so cool. I don't know if that makes it a tax write-off, but we'll try it.
Kinda.
Yeah.
All right, last question. This question is really for me. Give me some tips on how on the best way to ride the mechanical bull.
All right, I will tell you exactly. So mechanical bulls, I think a real bull's easier.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, because those mechanical bulls, they can tilt them sideways, like stuff the real bull can't do. But let's pretend they couldn't do all that. The way you ride a bull or a mechanical bull is I'll tell you why I think a real bull is easier. So when the bull leans up, like front legs up, you lean forward.
Oh, okay.
When he kicks his back legs back, you lean back. That's how you do it. It's this, right?
Got it.
So it's counter to what the bull is doing. This is where the mechanical part gets harder. So what you have to do when you're riding a bull is you look at the back top of his neck. That's the best indication of which direction he's going to go.
Okay.
And I've actually used this as an analogy for business. Like you got to predict where the market's going and lean that way. But when he shifts to the left, you shift your weight to the left like this, like that. So the arm up helps you. Like a lot of people think one hand on the bull makes it harder. It's actually harder to ride a bull holding on with two hands. It's one hand because you can shift that arm. So if he goes to the left, you shift to the left. If it goes to the right, you do this. You shift your arm over your head. So it's all about just like counter reacting to what the bull is doing and then guessing which direction it's going to go. What makes a mechanical bull harder is there's no neck. Only that operator knows where it's going. So you're really guessing at that point. So that's how you ride a bull, dude. Like it's just muscle memory. Like it's nothing to do with strength. Like some of the best bull riders in the world are like little lanky guys. It's almost like skaters, like it's little lanky guys that they're just have really good reflexes. So that's my bull riding advice. I'm a trained professional, not responsible for any injuries that may come from that.
Well, man, this was really good, dude. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for doing this. It was a lot of fun, man. And thank you for everything you do in the industry as well. And keep doing the good deed that you're doing. And everybody will see you out there. You see Bradley out, get him a whiskey neat.
There you go.
And something really good too. It's very special.
Absolutely. I appreciate it, guys. See y'all.
You got it.